welcome to the House of Hoosier podcast. I'm your host, AJ Guyton. I got my man, Austin Render, here with me, and also a special guest, man, my man, Dustin Dopirak, man. How you doing?
Doing good, AJ. How you, man?
I can't complain, man. Having a good time watching our Hoosiers develop, enjoying watching, the comeback for Indiana basketball, man. It's slowly but surely, but I've been excited watching. How about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think just from a reporter's perspective, it's been impressive to see what's come together, just how they've matured, even just game to game, week to week. I think you see a lot of lessons learned. I mean, especially if you really look at the last 2 weeks in particular, going from a really emotional high to a kind of an emotional hangover from the Purdue win to the Michigan loss, but then sort of, identifying basically that they got a little bit too high and a little bit too low. I think they really did a good job of sort of course correcting after that, going and beating up on a Penn State team that they'd already lost to on the road. And that I think they just were aware that they were better than them and said, okay, we've just got to establish this. Obviously just had a phenomenal half of basketball and, just kind of took the foot off the pedal a little bit, but had a big enough lead that it didn't matter. And then to go to Maryland, which can be a tough place to play, which is a place that they had not won. They hadn't won in that building. They hadn't won since Maryland had been in the Big Ten. Last time they won in College Park was 1934. Wow. They hadn't played in like 80 years in between there, but still all the same. To go into a place like that and have that kind of solid performance where they just sort of established will, I thought was really, I think, a big piece. They were aware, I think, that they had the edge in the post, that they could go to race and trace and they were going to be able to win that way. And obviously that's a better way to win on the road. You don't want to have to live on jump shots on the road. Typically, if you can outmuscle somebody, that's the most effective way, I think, to do it when you can. And they did. They defended really well. Also, they kept the ball out of the paint. They scored in the paint. And so it just showed, I think, a lot of maturity there. I think they had to play a little bit out of their shoes to beat Purdue. I think they had to play like their hair was on fire. It required that kind of emotion to beat that kind of team. But when they came down off of it, they were able to say, okay, these are teams that we have more talent than that we are able to beat up on. Let's just do that. And we can play this even. I thought that just being able to roll with all of those punches together in the course of 2 weeks, shows, I think, some maturity.
I thought so. Austin, man, what's up, man? How you been?
Hey, I'm good. I want to get both of your thoughts on this. AJ and I have talked about this a lot, obviously, the development of Xavier Johnson. I want to get, AJ, your thoughts on how a player can kind of get comfortable in an environment, because it did feel like it took him a little bit of time to get comfortable in Bloomington with Woodson, with the system. And he seems like he's playing less emotional. And then Dustin, on your side of things, what you've kind of seen out on the court that's allowed him to play better.
Yeah, from my standpoint, man, it's always an adjustment period. I think we kind of look at everything as a microwave society now. We expected Xavier Johnson to come in and contribute immediately right away and have the same exact numbers that he had at Pitt and lead the team in scoring and all that kind of stuff. But the playing in the Big Ten and playing in a new system with a new team as a transfer is really a difficult transition for a player. So he had to learn how to be effective within the system that he's playing in. Then he had to get it in a conference where the game is not as up and down. The tempo is not as high. You really have to be a little bit more cerebral. It's said to be an aggressive conference, but they will call unnecessary tic-tac fouls. So it's a different type of aggression. So, and then just slowing himself down, understanding that he's not going to duplicate those numbers that he was getting at Pittsburgh, because this is a team that he has more weapons around. So your points per game average is going to drop when you have these other players on your team, which is what you want as a player. And the two biggest things was just really staying out of foul trouble the best that he could, getting that under control and playing under control and having a high assist to turnover ratio. So that's what I'm excited about him. And I think he's been the steady, other than Trey Jackson Davis and Race to some extent, he's the guy that's been the steadiest the last few games. So and it's transferred into wins for Indiana.
Dustin, what are your thoughts on his development?
Yeah, no, on my end, I mean, I think you knew going in he was a high risk, high reward guy. I mean, for as much as he was scoring and his assist numbers were always high at Pitt, turnovers numbers were always really high too. I mean, I think he had like a good 100 more, I don't know if it was 100 more. It was a lot more turnovers in the same 3 years than Rob Finney. I mean, it was when you looked at their numbers together, they both played 3 seasons, mostly as starters, and the difference in numbers were really striking, but in good ways for X, but also in not great ways. Turnover numbers were always really high. He is, I think, to AJ's point, really playing a lot more under control. I think it's tough for a guy like him that his strongest suit is his aggression. His strongest suit is the fact that he is going to go really, really hard at the rim. He's so fast with the basketball in his hand. He's able to change direction, but I mean, he just comes with a head of steam wherever he's going. And when that works, that looks great. When it doesn't, it drives people crazy. I mean, it particularly, I think Indiana fans in particular, I think can get frustrated by a certain amount of overaggression by a guy who, it takes a lot of shots, is high volume, or just seems to be doing too much. And X can get that way, where we have moments where he seems to be just trying a little bit too hard, but also just determining way at the top of the key, I'm going to the rim, hell or high water, and I don't care what's in between me and that, I'm getting there. And when that works, it's great. When it doesn't, you look really bad doing it. It looks selfish on film, whether it is or not. I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but it looks that way. But I think he's really done a good job of picking his spots and sort of figuring out more of that. And he's gotten so much better as a finisher, I feel like, in recent weeks. I don't know if there's anything in particular he's doing different, but I'm seeing more feel for the backboard, more of a sense of where I'm trying to put this thing off of, a putting touch on it, of just going up in a way where you're making shots and you're not just sort of throwing it up there. I mean, I think his drives are smarter. They're aggressive. They're strong, but they're also controlled enough, making smart passes. I mean, turnover numbers are way down. I mean, it's really impressive as a team. I mean, I think they're under 10 in like 4 of their last 5 games or something like that. I mean, those numbers have come down drastically as a team. And for him individually, I mean, he's making a lot fewer mistakes, still happening from time to time, but I mean, really doing a good job, I think, of playing just well controlled. And he's defended well the whole time. I think that's an important piece. Is for the most part, he's cut down on fouls, and he's been a really important piece of that. Is both he and Finney, when obviously Finney's out at the moment, but those two together, I think, have been really good at stopping dribble penetration. You've always been able to really count on that from him on the defensive end. And the offense is just sort of fine and control. AJ, obviously, you play this position, man. You know what you're talking about more than anybody. I mean, am I right on a lot of those? Is that a lot of the same stuff you're seeing?
No, you're right. We talked last week on the podcast and talked about him being the Russell Westbrook of Indiana basketball. And that's kind of what we talked about. It's like high risk, high reward, but when it's low, it's low. So, but I always looked at him and even talked to him on a podcast, just told him, hey, you can master this concept of playing guard in the Big Ten, but it's got to come more from up top than it is physical. And he's such a physical, I'm gonna bull you up, I'm gonna go as fast as I can. But this guy's taking charges, this guy's helping, you're not kicking, you're making your finishes more difficult than they have to be. So I think he's just being more steady, hitting the open guy when he penetrates, taking his opportunities to finish, not forcing things as much as he was, even taking the open jump shot when he gets it. He's a little awkward, but if it goes in, it goes in. So it's all about the cerebral change when you get in the Big Ten, especially Big Ten play. And it all stems from how great these coaches are. I think Big Ten conference always have the best coaches in preparation. They know each other like the back of their hand. So when that happens, then you have to be patient, but you also have to be creative and finding ways to be effective on the floor. And I think Xavier has done that, and that's going to be the key with Indiana basketball. It's going to be the growth and maturation of those backcourt. Is Finney going to be healthy? Is Xavier going to continue to trend upward? Is Lander going to be able to help while Finney's out? All of these things play. I think you might have to look at playing Trey Galloway a little bit more with the ball in his hands. He's a really good pick and roll passer when he sees the right pass. He's tall. He can make passes. Guys can't make a willing passer, but also he can attack off the bounce. So you might look at playing him a little bit more with the ball in his hand too. So that's going to be, to me, is going to be the key on whether we can attack that upper echelon of the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, I think Trey is a really important point. I mean, I think he's been phenomenal 2 ways. What's impressed me about Trey, really since the beginning, even last year, is, I mean, he can do point guard stuff, but like he can create from angles or from spots on the floor that's not sort of typical point guard stuff. Like he doesn't have to be top of the key. He can get it from the elbow, he can get it from the wing or the corner and blow by somebody and create and finish or create. I mean, like he has that ability to come off the bounce. I mean, he's a little bit sort of more rigid just because he's a taller guy. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
have quite the wiggle that you want from a
Mhm.
point guard just because he's bigger, but he's got enough velocity going downhill. He's got enough change of direction that he can beat somebody. He's got the strength to finish, but does have that court vision, is a coach's kid, knows where the openings are going to be, has that ability on offense. But I mean, I think defensively, man, I mean, I think he's really changed they were good on defense.
Mhm.
They didn't have a guy like him though.
No.
Like when he was out, that they could take out a 2 guard or a 3. You know, like Parker and Miller are okay, but you know, they shoot the ball well. They're on the floor because they can shoot. They're not on the floor because they can defend. Trey's basically took out Eric Ayala the other night. You know, I mean, he had 2 shots. He made 2 shots. One was before Trey got on the floor. Another one I think was in transition. Took out Ivy, more or less, you know, during his period. And, you know, I mean, like he's starting to get those assignments now, but I mean, I think that's changed them defensively entirely when he's on the floor.
That's a great point.
He's a game changer. A comparison that comes to my head for X, and I don't know if you guys will agree with this, I see a little bit of like Troy Williams in him, in where he was a big play guy, aggressive, tried to go to the basket a lot. And I just, as a fan at that time, when Troy Williams was with IU, I was always just like, there's either going to be good Troy today or there's going to be bad Troy. And I feel a little bit of that with Xavier. They're obviously not the same position, but I feel that high risk, high reward type of situation with both of them.
Definitely. I mean, you have to, you know, Xavier is going to be a guy that's going to be counted on to get this team to the next level. I mean, you can't get to that next level without guards taking care of the basketball, without guards, you know, you got the challenge of the Illinois guards coming in soon. You got to take out those guys. So you got to have guys that can defend, compete, stay out of foul trouble. But you're going to have good Xavier more than we're going to have bad in order for it to take that next step. I'm always felt like Indiana was a middle of the pack Big Ten team before the season started. So now I'm looking at the lens of, okay, how do you overcome the middle of the pack to get to that top 4, the top 3, and with the Purdue, the Illinois, and these top teams. And that position is we're good with Trace. Trace is going to get you 18 points, 9 rebounds a night. That's just the energy and effort he gives. Race is going to get you. Some nights he gets you 18 like he did, but most nights he's going to get you 12 points, 9 rebounds, and a couple assists, couple steals, and defend the other team's best forward to keep Trace out of foul trouble. So, but now is that step with Finney getting hurt. I'm looking at the depth of the backcourt, and that's why I brought up Galloway as a potential Band-Aid until Finney gets back, because you just don't want to throw a kid like Lander in right now and say, hey, you got to be the best backup point guard in the Big Ten right now, when he was just sitting on the bench for the last 10 games. So that's going to be the most important piece. So we need good X more than we need bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Troy comparison is interesting. I think there's the high risk, high reward. There's the excitement versus the when it goes bad, it looks bad. I mean, the difference is like Troy had a clumsy streak to him. When X makes a mistake, it's just straight aggression. You know, it's not like he's not like Troy could trip over his own shoes. Like that's not going to happen with X. You know, that's less of a thing. I mean, but Troy obviously was 6'7" and with like a 38, 39 inch vertical, and like
he was a freak athlete.
He could trip over his shoes. He could also jump over the head of the guy that was defending him. So there's a little bit of difference. Obviously, just it's sort of the, you know, point guard, you know, X has a point guard level of coordination, but he's shorter, and you know, he can get up, like not like Troy could get up. I mean, Troy could do crazy stuff. So it's a little bit different, but it is, I think, that same level of guy that could frustrate you. I mean, I think I also look at Devontae Green. And it's not the same type of player either. Obviously, Devontae was a 2 and a shooter, but it's just like that thing where you could just see it in his eye that he, like, you knew when Devontae came down the floor, like when he was taking a shot, and if he made a step back 3, there's 0% chance he wasn't taking a 3 on the next possession. 0%. You could have guaranteed that. You could have put money down as soon as you could. You know, like if you could take that prop bet, you had to. But that doesn't. But in the same way that Green was like that, like you are better off for their aggression. I mean, like for as many Indiana fans might have complained about Devontae Green, but they were like, that was the best they could be, is like they had the Devontae opportunities. They were like with the team the way that was, he was the one guy who could create. who could get himself a shot, who could find offense, and a guy who could really blow up, basically. I mean, like you saw some games from him. I think he had 30 against Florida State. It's similar with X. It's like that the fact that element exists, the fact that he is a guy that can beat people off the bounce, really beat people off the bounce, really create off the dribble, really create for himself and for others, and be dynamic. It's better than having somebody who just passes the ball around. I mean, it's I get how, sometimes you want, it's soothing to have somebody who's fundamentally sound, the one who always makes the right play and always makes the right pass. And that helps. But if you have that kind of point guard, you have to have really dynamic 2s and 3s, and to get you points. When you have, in their case, obviously they start a couple catch and shoot guys at the 2 and the 3. Someone's got to create, someone's got to make something happen, and that's got to be X. And so so you have to be willing to live with that, live with some high risk, high reward. But again, I think they've done a good job. I think Mike Woodson must have done a really good job of connecting here. Kenya Hunter too. I think Kenya's a guy that helped recruit X. I think he almost had him at Nebraska when Kenya was on that staff, and he ended up, when that staff got let go, X ended up going to Pitt. But they have found a way to tell him, hey man, this is who we need you to be, who you can be. You have this freedom, but here's where you can be smarter. Here's how to make all of that work for you. That right now, it's really all just doing a good job of coming together. I mean, I think there's little elements you can look at. I mean, again, Woodson standing up for him after the booing against Notre Dame is a big turning point. I think you look back at that. I think that mattered to X a lot. And I think that's something that I think helped get his head right and created trust between coach and point guard, which matters. And so, all of that stuff I think is coming together pretty well for them in terms of figuring out who he's got to be, how he can be that.
Right. He's the best point guard they've had since Yogi. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I think
he's definitely the most explosive. I mean, if you want to have a long discussion about Al, I mean, like,
that's true. That's true.
And I don't know that I would say he's the best, but Al Durham had a heck of an Indiana career.
Yes.
But he's definitely the most explosive. He's definitely got a gear that no one else has had since Yogi. That's for sure.
Let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with Bet Rivers yet, now's the time, because they're offering a $250 match bonus for our first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one play to turn your money into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With football season kicking off, get in on the action by going to betrivers.com today or by downloading the Bet Rivers iOS app. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
He definitely does. But as we look forward here, this is an Indiana team that I hate to say it because you say it and you get the fans all riled up with their expectations, but I do think this is a team that could take a step into the top 5 of the Big Ten, maybe even play for a double bye, just with the way they've started to play here the past couple of games. They get Illinois at home coming up. Dustin, what has changed for you since November to now in terms of the expectations for this team?
Obviously, you look at the games that they've won and you have to say, well, if you can beat Purdue, even at your place, with all that emotion, again, that you could take, you could take away some of the things that they wanted to do. Like that just tells you that there's a capability, that there's a gear there. No, obviously that doesn't mean you're going to beat every team like that at home. Every good, you're going to have Wisconsin coming in. I don't think that makes, what they did against Purdue doesn't make it a definite that they beat Wisconsin. It doesn't make it a definite that they beat Illinois, but they have a shot. They have a crack at it, whereas like you just weren't sure just because, for reasons that he stated, Mike Woodson said, hey, I want to schedule tough, but I don't want to schedule tough when I don't know when I have. I'm waiting to find out, what this group looks like. I don't know who my players are. I don't know if they fit my system. I need to get used to these guys. And so, I'm going to schedule some wins, to start with, and we'll figure it out by the Big Ten. And so that's obviously a big piece there, but they obviously had to figure out, sort of who they were and what they were good at and how all these pieces come together and how they make sense together. And so they've I think really figured it out. I think again, like Galloway being healthy, Galloway getting back, I think has made a real difference because it really takes the defense to a new level of staple for them. I mean, the defensive numbers have been good all year, especially keeping the ball out of the paint, protecting the rim. Jackson Davis being allowed to go block shots now has made a huge difference. It's really tough to score on these guys in the paint. Always was. It's been tough for point guards to get past them. The one thing that they had trouble with is really good two guards. Buddy Boeheim went off on him. Johnny Davis went off on him, especially in the second half. There's a couple other guys that made some stuff happen. At Jalen Pickett at Penn State, they had a couple guys that managed to get going against in there, and some other like kind of smaller conference guys. I mean, I remember I think it's the Faulkner kid at Northern Kentucky.
Yep.
Once that game was over, he went off for a while. Like when that game was pretty much decided, but he had like, I don't know, 6 threes in a row or something crazy. With Galloway on the floor, it's hard to do that. And so it's like there's no trump card that another team has that Indiana can't defend. If you have a great point guard, Indiana can defend it. If you have a great two guard, Indiana can defend it. If you've got, one of those really playmaking, shot making power forwards that can take you an inside and out, your EJ Liddells, Indiana can guard that. Race Thompson can get after that guy, and Jordan Geronimo can get off after that guy off the bench. Anybody at the 5, Trace Jackson and Davis can handle this. That means he's going to beat everybody. No, obviously, Zach Edey's got next level size at 7'4". Kofi Coburn's got next level size. That's going to be a really tough matchup for Trace. But for the most part, they're going to be able to handle your bigger 5s. They're going to at least be able to provide some resistance. But like a 1, a 2, a 4, or a 3 for that matter. None of those guys have somebody like Indiana has somebody that can defend all of those guys. So what that means is there's nobody that you look at and say, well, there's just no chance Indiana beats that group. It's a bad matchup, no chance. Obviously Michigan burned them. Now they weren't playing very good in the first place, and Indiana got pretty good and scrambled as far as pick and roll stuff was concerned, as far as the ball movement around was concerned. I mean, they just weren't just doing a good job on rotations. They can have a bad night defensively. I mean, they're still not an overwhelming team, and offensively, they have, I think, some shortcomings, but defensively, when they put up their better lineups out there, you don't get easy buckets. And so that makes them tough to beat. So they've got a crack at the Illinois, the Wisconsins, the Purdue's, like all of those, the Michigan States. They've got a chance against those teams. That's not saying they're going to beat them all. Certainly not saying they're going to beat them all when they go out on the road. Obviously they get Michigan State only on the road. And I think, they get Wisconsin at home, they get Illinois at home. They got to go back on the road and play Purdue. And they got to go back on the road and play Ohio State. So none of those are sure things, but Indiana has answers for anything offensively that somebody else wants to do, and that gives you a chance.
Right.
AJ, we've talked about the need for this team to have a good wing player, a good wing defender, and it does feel like Trey Galloway is starting to settle into that role.
Definitely. And like we talked about earlier in conference play, man, you got to be able to have a guy. Most good teams have a guy that can go get them a basket, that can break down the defense, pull up, step backs, all these type of moves that break the mold of the offense and enables to get the team energy in a different way. And I thought over the years, Indiana has struggled at that position. That's why I was excited to see when they got the freshman Tamar Bates. I thought he would be a guy that could help defend that wing as well and help to get that under control. I remember Ron Harper Jr. giving us problems last year, a couple of years ago, and then a couple other two guards was just bullying us over. I know Eric Ayala is a smaller two guard, but we typically have problem with the bigger wing or the bigger two guard. And Trey Galloway definitely helps stymie that that when it comes to preparation. So it's going to be something that we definitely have to cover. I mean, you have to go to Purdue again. You still got Jaden Ivey again. You know what I mean? You got to shut that guy down. And, if when you talk to everybody, the road is going through Purdue. You talk about parity. The Purdue has 3 losses, right? 3 conference losses. Or 4. 3. So you talking about them to being the best team, and they got 3 losses. They're not, even in the top spot right now. So it's just like Dustin talked about, man. Indiana can beat anybody in front of them, but they can also lose to anybody in front of them. So it's just a matter of remaining consistent on the defensive end to give yourself a chance, create offense off of that defense when I think Indiana is at its best. When we get the, getting stops and walking the ball up like we did in the last era, that's when we get in trouble trying to play half court offense against everybody's set defense. He's just not going to score a high percentage of the time. So Trey Galloway allows you to switch, 1 through 4. He allows you to do different things defensively. He allows you, he contains the basketball, contest shots, got length and athleticism where he can make things happen. Then he gets out and he gets on a fast break, runs the lane. He can push the ball. He can also get out and finish. So he's definitely been the key to allowing Indiana's defense to stabilize, especially, with the drop in production from a little bit of production from Stewart, from Kopp, and from Bates. I think those guys one of those two guys is going to have to really, really up their game again in order to make this thing complete, because you're going to have to put that basketball in the hole when it comes to it. And, those guys really going to have to, one of those guys have to reestablish themselves in order to make that next step.
Yeah, I think Indiana, and Dustin, we've talked about it. AJ's stance on the starting lineup is he would change it, but he knows Mike Woodson's not going to. I know it's the question that's getting annoying at this point, but would you do anything to change the starting 5?
I think so. I really want to get more of Woodson's thinking on it, because I think there's an answer as to why he really likes this lineup. I want to get more just from a functional standpoint. I don't know how much of it is just I don't want to change the lineup because I like guys knowing what their roles are. I don't like messing with guys' confidence and tell them you've been demoted or something like that. I don't know how much of it is that. I mean, I think the reason to keep the lineup as it is, and then I'll make the case for ultimately I think it should change, but I'm going to make the case for why it shouldn't first from an X's and O's standpoint. I think one good thing it does is that when you've got Stewart and Kopp out there as those shooters, you really force the opposing defense to kind of show you their hand in terms of what they're going to do to you defensively. And what I mean by that most importantly is, I think early on, especially, they like Big Ten opponents were saying, okay, well, here's where we're doubling. Here's where the double is going to come from, and we're going to show this to you because you're going to notice that we're not doubling off of Kopp and we're not doubling off of Stewart, and we're probably not doubling off of Race either because he's probably around the bucket and we don't want to just give him easy ones. So I mean, that's what obviously Minnesota did. Is Minnesota said we are doubling off of Xavier Johnson and Rob Finney. This is going to be blatant. It's going to be obvious. We're basically going to say, X and Rob, you're up. Please take these shots. And they did, and they made them. And so I think when you've got Stewart and Kopp out there, you see, the game plan becomes evident to you really quickly. If you watch the close enough, you can say, okay, where are they doubling off of? Where are they not doubling off of? What are they trying to do to us defensively? I think it forces opponents to put their cards on the table as far as what that looks like. And again, it sort of gets you started. Maybe it gets you an opportunity to open up the paint. The biggest reason those guys are out there together is just to space the floor. It is, obviously the one big issue that Indiana dealt with the last couple of years is, too many bodies in the paint, basically for what they wanted to do. Obviously their best player being their center, there was just too many guys around them, around Trace and around Race even. And, it made them it difficult to work. So I think when those two guys are out there, it forces at least two defenders to chase them around the perimeter. Obviously you got whoever's got guarding the point guard. So you're more likely looking at only two guys around the paint. And so that gives you, again, more opportunity to work. So allows you to get that started, and then allows you, again, to get the defense to show their hand in terms of, what their ball screen coverages are going to look like. And again, what their, how they're going to defend you. And then you get to see that the rest of the way that informs what you do going forward. So I think that's probably a big reason why he does it. That being said, I think, you're almost always forcing Parker Stewart to guard a guy that's above him, as far as on that side of the ball. Like you're all like you can almost tell, like there's been a couple of occasions where Parker's just like, you're really making me guard this guy. Like Jordan Bohannon literally was like running circles around him. Same thing with Eli Brooks. Like they make him expend as much energy as possible, and they're like literally like running laps around him just to try to tire him out. And it's just he's just not that level of defender to guard a really, really good two guard. When it's a guy like Ivy on the floor, like I think you just have to have Galloway out there because you just don't want to give up 10 points out of the gate. Now I got to give credit. Stewart did, Ivy didn't get going at the beginning of that game. He got going in the second half. against Stewart, and they sort of identified that mismatch there. But, Stewart hung in there for the first 6 minutes of that game. But it's just, I think there's just value in making sure that you're not letting a two guard like that get going. And I don't think it matters. I mean, I think you can change it based on matchups. If there's not a guy that you're afraid of like that, it makes more sense. But I think if you're facing a top level two guard, I think you got to have Galloway out there just so that guy doesn't burn you right out of the gate.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you have to give credit where credit's due to the starting lineup in the last 2 games. They've come out well.
They
And
did
now
really good against Penn State.
Maryland, they were down 8-0, but then they kind of surged back and took the
Right.
13 or 9-0, whatever it was. But the Penn State game was, you could tell the starters had kind of heard everything. I mean, these guys are on social media. They see it. They know, and they came out and they played well. I think Miller Kopp's been shooting better of late. I think everything, though, centers around the man who is now a marksman from 3. That's Race Thompson. I think he's now Indiana's best 3-point shooter, obviously tongue in cheek.
Over the last 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah. But that guy just makes everything go, I think. And I think as good as Trace Jackson Davis is, as important as Xavier Johnson is, I think this team goes as Race Thompson goes. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say it goes that he goes because I think he's steady. I mean, just because I think like it goes as X goes because it's when X
That's
is
fair.
bad, it's not as good. But like race is really important. If you lost Race, that's devastating. But the thing about it, but I guess my point is Race is a constant.
Yeah.
Race and Trace are constants. X is a variable. But you are getting, even when you're not getting a lot of points, he's going to defend the heck out of, whoever he's guarding. He's going to create steals. He's going to rebound, even if he's not getting every rebound. I mean, he's going to have a body down there boxing out the guy he's supposed to box out. He passes the ball well. He works well with Jackson Davis to get him just, I think this is a great job of playing off of each other. He knows where to get Trace the ball. Trace knows where to find him. He knows how to move around Trace. And so I think he's just been fantastic. So I would, the only reason I wouldn't say it goes is he goes. I think you've reached the point that you can trust you're getting a good performance out of Race Thompson. No matter what the numbers say, like you're going to get a good performance out of Race Thompson every single game. Threes help, don't get me wrong. The fact that those are starting to work, I think also allows you to play around with lineups because he can space the floor. And if you can get that, then you don't necessarily need both of your 2 and 3 to be able to shoot it. But that helps. But you've been getting the defense, the rebounding, the points around the bucket, and the passing, which I think is really important all year.
I think they've done a really good job of utilizing.
AJ, you want to add to that, man?
Yeah, go.
Because
I agree totally with you. I don't think he's the key and the gauge of how Indiana basketball is going to play. I think it really depends on the guard play. I keep harping on that. I really think it depends on, are they steady? Are they turning the basketball over? Are they making shots? Are they getting the ball inside? Are they keeping people out the paint? Because at the end of the day, that's been the weakness of the team over the years, and I think they're shoring up that weakness. I think Race and Trace have always been consistent. I think you know what you're going to get from them, and when you get a 3-pointer out of Race, then that's something even different than we got before. When you get a jump shot out of Trace, a knockdown, that's something different than he did before. But they're pretty consistent. Even Trey Galloway is pretty consistent in what he brings to the basketball team. But Xavier Johnson, Rob Finney, those are the things that those are the 2 guys that have been riding the wave, down and now they're up and on an upswing right now. So, they just got to keep that consistent to get himself a chance every night.
I've really enjoyed the lineups that Mike has gone with Race and Geronimo at the 5 and 4. I just think Geronimo is really opening up something, and he doesn't play more than 10, 12 minutes a game. But I feel like when he's out there, he changes what happens. What have you guys seen in the way that he has played and what he has brought to this team off the bench?
Go ahead, Dustin.
Okay. No, I think, just that athleticism is exceptional. It's just off the charts. And I think he's got a 40-inch vertical and a 7-foot wingspan. And he is, again, you just see him growing all the time. I mean, I think he's already a pretty smart basketball player to start with, but like he's more and more in the place where he's supposed to be. But I mean, even when he makes a mistake, he can just recover so fast, and just like he plays with the ferocity. I mean, he's just at the rim all the time. Anything that comes anywhere near there when he's on defense, he's getting up there and swatting away. It adds an entirely different dynamic. I mean, he'd be fun. Like, if Race Thompson, went out tomorrow, if he had an ankle injury or something like that, he couldn't play. I mean, Jordan Geronimo, you could put him out there for 35 minutes and feel great about it. Right. I mean, the only reason Geronimo is not playing more than he is because Race Thompson has been that solid. Mm-hmm. That's really all it comes down to. And I think it is good that they're getting those two, floor time together. I mean, I think, obviously I think Durr's in there when they feel like they need somebody that's bigger, but I think they like what they can get out of a more athletic lineup at the 4 and the 5 with Thompson and Geronimo together. And I think they're just trying to make sure that they get Geronimo as much time as they can. It's just tough because, again, Thompson is that steady, and Geronimo can defend the same guys Thompson can, but there's obviously a level of experience that Thompson has that Geronimo doesn't, and just the ability to kind of know what somebody's going to do, where Geronimo is getting by a little bit more on athleticism still. Not that he's, again, bad at knowing how to defend somebody, but Thompson just has those years. I think that's sort of the biggest difference, but he does so many things well. I mean, he's got range as a shooter. Also, I think you not only have the 3 ball that you've seen him hit, that mid-range stuff he's getting lately too, I think really matters. It's like kind of some pick and short roll stuff, some high post, get the ball at the high post, turn around and hit a jumper from 10-15 feet. That spreads the defense out too. I think there's just so many good pieces to his game. I mean, he really he might be the best pro prospect on the roster. It wouldn't surprise me. Again, just the overall amount of athleticism he has, that I think multiple positions he could play at the next level. It's just he impresses me more just every time I watch him, and he just, more than anybody else, he jumps off the page. Obviously, I mean, again, Trace is a better player, more established, everything else. Race obviously I think has better experience and those things, but like just athletically, you watch Geronimo and it like he's good for one thing that puts your jaw on the floor every game. At least one, maybe 2 or 3 that you're just like, wow, that's one hell of an athlete right there. And so and that, it just, again, the energy all the time too. Like, I mean, like athleticism, I guess, gets roped in with that, but like motor is never not running for that guy either. Right. It's like he might be off sometimes, but man, he is never not going all out. And that allows, I think, him to correct mistakes really quickly. If he's out of position, he gets back into it really fast.
Right. No doubt. Yeah, I feel the same way. Geronimo is playing well. He's contributing the way he can. I mean, me as a coach, as a former coach, I'm looking like I want to get this guy more minutes. I don't care who's behind, who's in front of, because he can be a crucial piece going down the road, down the line, and developing, making shots. Because he can make a play on either end of the floor in either position. He can block a shot. He can get a steal. He can get a rebound. He can shoot the 3. He can defend. He gives you versatility defensively. You have to find more minutes for a guy like that, and I think he's doing it right. Just kind of gradually giving it to him. But I wouldn't want to go backwards and him not play at all. Just continue to get his minutes and improve his minutes and get more minutes. He's going to do nothing but provide more of a safety net for Coach Woodson as he goes forward.
I think it'll be a trendy pick, but I think he could be that guy who really jumps off the page next year when Race is out of the way and he is kind of the 4 guy for Indiana. But we'll see. As we look forward here, we'll let you go on this, Dustin. The Illinois game coming up this weekend. Obviously, any home game against a ranked team in Assembly Hall is going to be a crazy atmosphere. Indiana's coming off 2 straight wins, a whole week off. I think you're going to see a really excited Assembly Hall. What does this Indiana team have to do to beat a team like Illinois?
I mean, one of the biggest things obviously is Trace has to be a little bit more even in that matchup with Kofi. I mean, that's a guy that he's had a tough time with, and how wouldn't you? I mean, like, Kofi is humongous. That is a giant person. And every time you look at him, you're like, how is somebody that big? And so that's tough, for Trace, who's obviously a big guy himself, but I mean, there's just a different level of size in there. And, they've obviously got to help him, with Kofi down in the block. I mean, and find ways of, getting him the ball in positions, getting him good angles, basically getting him spots. I mean, he's the more athletic of the two still. It's just the amount of size and the amount of muscle that he's dealing with. It's just tough to move that, it is moving a mountain down there. So, like they just they just got to be smart about, finding ways of putting him in position to score, because that's a big place for them. But, elsewhere, it's just being on top of all the other weapons that Illinois has that are an issue. I mean, obviously both of those 2 point guard types, Frazier and I mean, is Corbello going to be back? I haven't checked this out.
I don't know off the top of my head. But I mean, you have to give a lot of credit to Alfonso Plummer. He's been really good in his absence.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, I think that's a good guy for Trey Galloway to chase around. That's one I think that fits. But I mean, Plummer is a scorer and a guy that just can gun and knock him down. And that's, he's obviously a big deal. I think you need a big performance from Galloway on Plummer. But you need X and Xavier Johnson in particular to be good on Frazier or Corbello or those, whether it's Galloway out there with Frazier, they got to be able to handle both guys. So that's a tough backcourt to deal with. Williams kid too is another guy you got to guard. They've got a lot of pieces. There's a lot of tough ones for him to go against. I mean, there's no IO on there, so that makes life a little bit easier. No one's at that level. But it's not getting blown up by Kofi, and it's not letting any of those other guards beat you up, and find ways of scoring against them. Find ways to get to the bucket. So you need continued good play from Xavier Johnson, continued good defense from Trey Galloway. I think Race Thompson has to have a big day. You got to be able to take advantage of him down there. And you probably got to know that you're probably not getting a blow up Trace performance. You got to find a way to win if you're going to get 15 from Trace as opposed to a 25. It's just tough to score down on that guy and just try to limit Kofi to some degree. I think those are some of the big keys there. But if you can shoot the basketball, obviously, just take advantage of the emotion that you're going to have at home. All those things got to come together. It is a tough matchup because, again, anytime you're dealing with Kofi Coburn, it's a tough matchup.
AJ, who are you looking at as somebody who could, not named Trace Jackson Davis, that could impact this game?
Right off the top is Michael Durr. I'm looking at this game, and I'm looking at how they're going to have a similar game plan that they had against Purdue. And that was what I feel like of watching the Purdue game. They forced Purdue to play their style, our style of basketball, more than Purdue wants to play their style. I think I've seen a stat where Purdue scores over 80 points. They're like 11-0 or something like that. Can't remember exactly what it was, but whenever they score a lot of points, they win the game. And I think they were able to slow down Purdue. They were able to make them play half-court offense. But Michael Durr was huge in that because he provided a big body when Trey's got in foul trouble that we were able to go to continue to stymie Edey and stymie Trevion Williams. And he'll have to do the same with Kofi Coburn. He's going to be crucial in that because, you don't want your best player. People want their best player to guard the other team's best player, but a lot of coaches don't like doing that because it gets your best player in foul trouble. Especially on the road, you don't need Trace to be in foul trouble. So I feel like he's going to manage that very well. Trace gets his first foul, Michael Durr's coming right in. And he's going to try to get to the second half with Trace only having one foul. And that's going to bode well for Indiana in the second half. So, and I know Illinois wants to be up tempo. We're going to have to be a beast. If Corbello plays, going to have to be a beast in pick and roll defense. You're really going to have to focus on switching those things and containing those things and making Corbello throw that ball inside with help on the backside, or making Corbello play one-on-one against a Trey Galloway or against another player that can make a shot difficult for Corbello, who's great at making difficult shots. Stopping Alfonso Plummer's, lethal three-point shooting is going to be crucial. That he doesn't get 20 points off of 6 threes. That's very important to take that away from him. And then the other part, the person that is important is Trent Frazier, man. It's just like he's been very steady as a fifth-year senior for Illinois. He knows exactly what it takes to win, and he's going to push that envelope, try to get that tempo going. So in order to be successful, man, we got to really control the tempo. Can't play that style. I don't know if we have the horses to shoot and make 15 threes and 16 threes and get up and down. We got to really pound that thing inside, make that double come, make the right decision off that double team when Trace kicks it, or even Race if he starts to get doubled. So we got to be real strategic and cerebral about beating Illinois. But like we talked about earlier, it's very possible. All these teams are beatable.
I know we're scared just because of the Purdue game and Trace's foul trouble, but I do think it's fair to point out that Kofi is also susceptible to foul trouble. We've seen him get in foul trouble in some of their bigger games as well. So maybe that's something that Trace can take advantage of on the offensive side of the floor. Dustin, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been really nice. A good conversation here between you guys. And thanks so much. Enjoy the quote unquote off week here until Saturday. And hopefully we'll get a fun atmosphere there in Assembly Hall Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely. Austin, AJ, thanks so much for having me on, guys.
No problem, man. It was great, man. Let's do it again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. That was the episode of House of Hoosier. Make sure you check out our iTunes, Apple page, subscribe, our YouTube page as well, and Field of 68. Thanks to Dustin Dopirak for joining us. For AJ Guyton and Austin Render, that was the House of Hoosier podcast.